Well, I spent over $1 billion, and all I got was this dopey T-shirt. 7:05, good morning. It is great to be here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We're always streaming at KCMOTalkRadio.com. So now that all the votes are officially counted, it took some of these counties in California a month to count ballots. It's a freaking joke. I mean, it's something that I know the election went the way many of us wanted it to. But the fact that we were still counting votes up until the last few days in certain counties and precincts in places like California is comical. It's really an embarrassment. We've been putting people on the moon for 50, 60 years now, and we're taking a month to count ballots. And of course, it seems like it's always in blue states. Why is that? It's ridiculous. But anyway, now that we finally got basically every last vote tallied, we can say with certainty that Kamala Harris is a first. Kamala Harris is a historic figure, just not in the way she ever wanted to be. Kamala Harris became the first presidential candidate since 1932 to fail to flip a single county in the general election. That's right, 1932. The last time a presidential candidate failed to flip a single county was during the Great Depression. Reading this from the Economic Times, they write here that this is Harris's inability to make inroads with key voting blocs, particularly in battleground states. And it has raised concerns about the Democratic Party's electoral strategy. States like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, which Democrats had hoped to reclaim, remained firmly in Republican hands. Political experts point to Harris's struggle to resonate with moderate and rural voters as a key factor. While her campaign heavily targeted urban areas, it failed to expand beyond traditional Democratic strongholds. Well, here's the problem for that analysis, which is a bad analysis as well. She did worse in those strong Democratic strongholds. Those all moved to the right as well. New York, Chicago, Atlanta, some of the most urban areas in the country, yes, they stayed blue, but they shifted to the right. Everything about the campaign, $1 billion down the drain for the campaign. And Kamala Harris could not flip a single county. First time in almost 100 years, a candidate has failed to flip a single county in the United States. That is absolutely insane. And in case you're wondering, there are 3,144 counties in this country. 3,100 counties in America. And the Harris campaign, which had over $1 billion to spend, could not flip a single one. Now, of course, they kept counties here like Johnson County and Jackson County in our backyard in Kansas and Missouri. But it's pretty amazing when you put it into that perspective. Trump flipped a lot of counties, dozens of counties, many in Texas along the southern border, in swing states as well. Kamala Harris couldn't flip one. That is wild. Now, of course, the analysis continues after the fact, and there was something very interesting that was said on News Nation last night. And the commentary came from somebody who is a donor in the Democratic Party, Lindy Lee. She went on News Nation last night and was asked about Joe Biden coming out of nowhere to basically hand over the party and hand over the ticket to Kamala Harris. And apparently that was not part of the plan from the Democratic chieftains.
Do you agree that Obama and Pelosi did not want Harris?
I know they didn't. It's not. I have a lot of friends in Obama world, and actually, I'm friends with Speaker Pelosi, and I spoke with her before I actually went on air to encourage President Biden to step aside. And I touched base with her camp before I did that.
And what did she tell you?
It's not a matter of conjecture for me. I know they didn't.
I appreciate that. What did she tell you at that time?
Well, she She said it was fine that I went on air to encourage President Biden to step down. It was July 21st when I went on Fox News Sunday, and I said it was time for him to step down and pass the mantle to the next generation. It was necessary. It became clear that he was no longer able to effectively litigate the case against President Biden, against Trump. So, and Obama and Pelosi were both hoping for a primary instead of a coronation, so to speak.
And then what did Joe Biden do? He stuck it to him and left him with Kamala Harris. For all the talk, and we talk about it plenty, on how Joe Biden hasn't had it all there for quite some time, he knew enough to understand that Kamala Harris was not going to be a good candidate in a general election. And this was his final double middle finger to the people who wanted him out. He said, if you don't think I'm up for it, if you guys are trying to stage a coup on me, well, guess what? I'm going to stick it to you because I'm going to leave you stuck with Kamala Harris. Joe Biden, for all of his flaws, understood, being around Kamala Harris in some respects for the last 3.5, 4 years, that she was not going to be a strong candidate. That's why he did this. There's no way he did this because he genuinely thought that she was the best person suited to win the election. Heck, Joe Biden, go back 4 years, 4.5 years. He only picked her because of her gender and skin color. That's not an opinion. He said he was going to do that in the summer of 2020 after all the George Floyd stuff. He knew what the Democratic Party was getting. And it was his final flip-off to the powers that be, including his former boss and longtime friend, Barack Obama. But it didn't end there. Here's more of Lindy Lee, a Democratic strategist, someone who was close to the mega donor class as well on News Nation.
Who do you think they were hoping for?
I don't think Pelosi was hoping for anyone in particular, or not that I know of. I do know that Obama was carefully vetting Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona. I know there were other names on his list. I'm not saying that Kamala Harris is necessarily at the top of the list, but he was definitely considering other candidates. I don't think she was ruled out. I just think that everyone is, a lot of people, the chieftains of the party, were hoping for a lightning round, a lightning primary. And President Biden essentially preempted that by issuing his endorsement 30 minutes after he dropped out. I don't think anyone saw that coming. We did not see that coming. I think a lot of people anticipated that he might have stepped aside, but no one anticipated the twofer that we got that day.
Joe Biden endorsed Kamala Harris to tank the coup. That's it. That's the takeaway. And we've heard different versions of this, more or less, in the last few weeks as the aftermath has come through on the Democratic side of the aisle, and they've acknowledged was a poor candidate Kamala Harris was from the get-go. The way that she really didn't appeal to anybody that she needed to win over in this election. And it was always going to be an uphill battle, and no celebrity endorsement from Taylor Swift to Beyonce to Megan Thee Stallion. Stay it right? Megan Thee Stallion. That's how I say it, right? Mark, can you confirm this for me as my pop culture expert here on KCMO?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Stallion.
The double E, the Stallion. Didn't matter. She was a weak candidate, and Joe Biden knew it. And that's why Joe Biden, when he met Donald Trump at the White House a couple of weeks ago, had that big old grin on his face. I hadn't seen Joe Biden that happy in months. And I don't think that's by accident. 913-408-7957. I know you're going to want to react. And listen, whenever the books come out in the months and years ahead, I'm going to read them because I am fascinated by the decision-making that went in to Joe Biden and his team, and I believe his wife as well, Jill played a big role in this, to basically stick it to the chieftains, stick it to Obama, stick it to Pelosi, and say, you want me out? Have fun with Kamala. 913-408-7957.
I'm not worth your Red Lobster money.
Jonathan's in Kansas City. Hey, Jonathan, you're on KCMO. What's going on?
Hey, I find it fascinating you're bringing up these stats. If you go to kceb.org, which is the Kansas City Election Board within Jackson County, the turnout was only 54%, which their records go back to 1992 on the website, so you can look at voter turnout for the last 30 years of presidential elections. She has the lowest turnout of any election in the last 30 years. Like 1996, when nobody was voting and Clinton carried Missouri over Bob Dole, like it was a very low turnout election. It was lower than that, which is insane. And not only that, if you look at Jackson County Election Board, which is outside of Kansas City, the turnout was 77%, which is only a little bit lower than the turnout in 2008 with Obama, where he almost carried Missouri. He got a turnout of 80%. So, like, if you look at the data all over, and I don't know who she hired for her team, but, like, I mean, they need to never have a career in politics ever again because, you know, if she had any competent data people, they would have turned her campaign around early on, seeing these warning signs.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. It's interesting. Good data there. It's the chicken or the egg, right? No doubt, and a lot of people have said that over the last bunch of weeks. Whoever ran Kamala Harris's campaign should never work again. And I get it, but a part of me is like, man, you were playing the game with one arm tied behind your back. It's like playing a football game with 10 players. The Chiefs aren't going to win if you're playing with 10 players. The Chiefs might not win playing with 11 players. Somehow they're 11-1, though. Go figure. But you get the point. Like, they were working with such a poor candidate.
Wet matches.
Yes. I mean, come on. I totally get what you're saying. I do. But when you got somebody who goes on The View for a softball interview and they're trying to make you look good, and they say, so what's something you do different than Joe Biden? Well, nothing really. So why are you here? What are we doing?
She's a real beauty.
Oh, that's the part that I just don't agree with the statement. And I've heard it time and time again for the last, month or so now. Let's go to Wes in Gladstone. What's up, Wes?
Yeah, Pete. So what did Barack and Nancy expect from a guy who spent 50 years, I think, as you had said earlier, grifting off the public? And what did they expect from a guy who sent his drug-addicted son overseas to be his bag man? Of course he stabbed him in the back. Just the kind of guy that he is.
Well, they stabbed him. They stabbed him in the front. He stabbed them in the back, right?
Right. So that was a gang of three co-conspirators, each stabbing each one in the back, and they've got nothing to complain about.
Yep, that's very true. Thank you very much there, Wes. Let's go to John in Independence. What's up, John? You're on KCMO.
Yeah, Wes just kind of took my point. When they kicked him out, Biden, and he immediately endorsed Kamala. That was getting his revenge because he even knew that she didn't stand a chance to win the thing, and I think he did that out of spite and malice because they threw him in the gutter.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're right.
This whole election was just. I'm 60 years old, and I remember seeing elections back when I was a kid, but I've never seen an election like this one. This one was bizarre from start to finish.
It was. It's cliche, and I hate using cliches. Bill O'Reilly taught me to never use cliches. But if you're going to use one, at least admit you're about to use one. So that's what I'm doing here. We did just live through history, like memorable history. Everything is history in some respect, but we just lived through a history that will be talked about and written about for decades, centuries to come. And I remember that Sunday that Joe dropped out, I had just started a vacation, visiting family, literally dragging 3 kids down to the beach. And I think it was my brother who yells out the back door, Joe's done. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Now I got to go inside. I got to make phone calls. I'm just trying to take the kids to the beach. But, work never ends in this business. I was fine with it. And then he endorsed Kamala a half hour later. And my thought was that it was all about the money because she was the only one who could use all the money that he had raised, which at that point was well over $100 million. But then as time went on, it's like, man, she is no good at this. This is not going to work out well for him. And now, with all the people talking it does make you wonder. And I think it's become pretty obvious that Joe did this as revenge. And whenever that's written about, man, I am here to read about it and hear about it.